My name is Steve Siler. I'm the founder and director of Music for the Soul. We use songs and stories and videos to share the compassion of Christ with people who are hurting and who are going through difficult circumstances. And what you're about to see is a song and video project that we've created to encourage those who are living out the process of adoption. When Reggie and I were writing the song and began to talk about how we were going to record it, we realized that we knew so many players and musicians in town who have adopted children. And we thought, wow, it would be great to have the entire band be folks that had that personal experience with adoption, and they'd bring that passion to the recording. And then once we got them all together, we realized, well, wait a minute, as long as we've got all these guys together, we ought to videotape this. What we'd like to do with this program, hopefully, is accomplish three goals. The first is to encourage parents who have already adopted. Adoption is a very difficult thing to do. It's a very selfless thing to do, and it's a lot of work. Secondly, we wanted to be able to create something that would encourage people who are considering adoption. And we just thought hearing the stories of people who've actually done it and are living it would be an encouragement to those who are considering it. And third, for those folks who may have found themselves in the situation with an unplanned pregnancy, we wanted to be able to give them a look at the joy and the celebration and everything that comes with being able to adopt a child, so that might be a decision that they would consider as one of their options.
My name is Reggie Ham. I'm a singer-songwriter from Nashville, Tennessee. I've written hits for other artists, and I've also been a recording artist myself. I've recorded 6 CDs and teamed up with Steve Siler with Music for the Soul for the song Under My Skin. The way the idea for Under My Skin came about was really lunch. I was having lunch with Steve Siler, a good friend of mine for many years, and I've been following his progress with Music for the Soul. And I said, have you ever thought about doing something about adoption and about the positivity of that and how that looks and feels and how that plays out? So we had a conversation about it over lunch, and we had a lot of ideas regarding it, and it was very cool. It was like one of those meetings where there's something there, you just don't know exactly how to execute it, but we kept talking about it over the next weeks. The process for writing Under My Skin, when Steve came over, we had been talking about this idea, this project. He came over to the studio, and we were kicking around song ideas, and he had the idea for a song called Under My Skin, which is sort of a play on when some people can get under your skin, but when you have adopted children, they get under your skin in a different way. They kind of get in your soul in a way that's hard to explain. And so he had this chord progression that I really thought was cool, and we just sort of played off of it. I think it took a couple of sessions, but it was several months before we finally finished it. But I'm really pleased with the final product. Our motivation to adopt was actually pretty simple. We just couldn't have children, and so we went through in vitro fertilization twice, and that didn't work either time. I always wanted to adopt, whether I had biological children or not, and my wife kind of came around to it, you know, as time went on, and then finally we decided to go to China and adopt first.
You stay under my skin and burst in my heart like 1,000 parades.
I could tell my heart just changed during the process. I could feel it changing during my prayer time, praying about the possibility of adoption. I could just tell something was happening in me. A pastor in town got a hold of us. He knew Wanda had a miscarriage. And he said, there's a young lady in our church that has gotten pregnant out of wedlock. Would you all be interested in being its parents? And we said, yes, we would. When we walked in the room, she started crying profusely. And we were like, wow, what's going on here? And she said, you'll have to pardon my tears, but when you walked in the room, I knew you were the parents for this child.
Well, what motivated us to adopt was the fact that we couldn't have kids. So we were married 8 years, and you know, for 8 years, no kids, and we really, really wanted to have kids. So we started looking at the possibility of adopting, and kind of, you know, just how God orchestrates things. We met this lady from St. Charles, Missouri, who was an adoption agent owner, and there was this little girl named Haley. She was 13 when she got pregnant, and she had Olivia when she was 14. And so she met with us, and we went out there, and we just loved her. We were like, I wanted to adopt Haley, to be honest with you. She was just so precious, and she was this awesome girl that was basically being forced by her parents to have an abortion. They were trying to get Haley, who was 13, going on 14, to abort this little baby. And so she ran away and went to a place where she could be protected. And that's where Joan introduced us to Haley. And like I said, we just loved her, and she loved us. And so we adopted Olivia the day she was born. We do what's called an open adoption. So we keep in touch with her throughout the years. Well, time goes on, she meets a great guy, she gets married, she has 2 kids. And Haley calls Tammy and I, because at this time, both of her parents, her biological parents, have passed on. So Haley asked Tammy and I if we could be the godparents of her kids. So we have this really amazing relationship with Haley. I mean, she's been there for Olivia's 16th birthday. You know, it's just awesome.
My daughter was born with special needs that went undiagnosed for 5 years. So definitely just keeping her in therapy and not giving up hope and surrounding her in a great learning environment. And because she's nonverbal, I never really knew how she felt about being adopted. With my son, a lot of questions about adoption, trying to understand at a young age why he would be given away.
You never have enough money for a kid. I don't care if you're a millionaire, you never have enough money for a kid. So don't let that be an issue. God will provide. Certainly Laurie and I didn't have money to get a baby from China. We wound up with a baby from China. And then on top of that, an adoption, which we had the great honor of being the most expensive adoption at Mercy Ministries, because in my son's case, he had a lawyer, Mercy had a lawyer, we had a lawyer. But through God's intervention and people, they're here. They're teenagers making us crazy, so we did it. So don't let things like that come into your consideration. If it's a heart issue and you think, wow, I want to adopt, we should, or you've made your decision. Just do it.
The biggest fear was the unknown before we adopted. We did have some fear because in our adoption process, the birth father did not sign, but only the birth mother, and we had to basically bring him home and love him and fall in love with him with the fear that we might not get to keep him.
We've had a couple of talks with Daniel about his biological mother. The last talk we had, he cried, and we asked, why are you crying? And he said, just because I kind of feel for her and I might not ever get to see her. And we said, you know what? If you're meant to see her and you really want to, we'll work that out.
Our deepest challenge in adopting is we're walking through that right now. We adopted a young man from the Ukraine out of an orphanage when he was 15 years old. And as my friend Oleg said, he's a Ukrainian that lives here, he's like, well, you got him in the basement was already built, you know, and he was right, man. It's just, there's so many things about Jake that, you know, we love him and you know, he's my son, but there's so many things about him that that are already ingrained in who he is and his personality and the way he perceives life. And so that's been the hardest thing, you know, just trying to get through to him, just to go, look, you're in a safe place. You can let all that go. And I know it's hard, but it's like, you can trust us. You know, look back over the last 5 years, you can trust us. And so just watching him not trust us is the hardest thing that we've ever walked through.
Well, initially our biggest fear, I think, was that we didn't want an open relationship with the birth mother because we felt like that would be weird and, you know, she'd be like butting in on our family and we'd have to be considering her in things. And so that was one of our fears. But then that actually did not bear out to be true. We went to China for our first adoption. And in the midst of that, we got a call about a 2-week-old baby boy who was already born here in Nashville at Mercy Ministries, and we started the plans to adopt him as well in an open adoption. And the birth mother is a wonderful part of our family. We're like great friends.
The only thing that gets me sometimes is, you know, some people just, you know, they go out, they have a nice dinner, they drink some fine wine, and then, you know, 9 months later they have a baby. It's all great. But we chose and went through financial sacrifice to bring this kid into this house. And they make you crazy and they don't get it. And you can't tell them that, you know, but the frustrations are like any frustrations with any other parent. I don't see any differences.
I think the deepest challenge with adopted kids, with our children too, all children who are adopted, from what I've read and the therapists I've talked to and all of the stuff we've researched, is that all children who are adopted have some sort of attachment issue. And I think that's the biggest challenge is, I think you have to, when you think you've loved enough, you have to love more, because they know they were ripped away from something. There's some kind of innate thing there, and I think you just got to be honest about that. I mean, that is a true thing.
Probably the deepest challenge with our adoption has just been the normal challenges of raising a child. You know, there's been conflict, there's been upset over the years, there's just going into the teen years and seeing them become independent and being the person that they are. And probably the other challenge has been we were able to conceive after adoption, and so having the challenge of having a child adopted and then her sometimes feeling like she's not part because she's different from the other kids, and so that caused it to be a challenge sometimes.
I think our biggest fear about adopting at the time was just, it's kind of like just being a parent. It's like, are we gonna be able to do this? I think it's kind of the same fear as you have just having your kids. Like, you know, there's no manual, we don't know what's gonna go on with this craziness. But you know, of course, we want Olivia to have everything she needed, and just as she grew up, you know, we want her to love us like her real parents. And honestly, we are her real parents. I mean, you know, when she sees Haley, Haley's like her friend, her birth mom, and we're her parents.
The most important thing I think to remember when considering adoption is just that you're not, it's not a different type of person that you're adopting. Just because it's an adopted kid, it's not, they don't have their own category. They're still your kids. Brandon and the other three, I don't look at them any differently. And when I see them interact, I don't see an adopted kid interact with my biological kids. I see my kids. And speaking as a guy who has both, there is no difference.
If I saw myself in you, would it be a lie? I think sometimes I catch a glimpse when I look in your eyes. There is so much more to this and us than just a name, more than a sketch, more than a frame. 'Cause you stay under my skin and burst in my heart like 1,000 parades. And oh, you dance in my mind and rush through my soul like hope in my veins. And DNA will have its say, but nevertheless you remain under my skin.